You know, sometimes a court case from 100 years ago can read like a modern business thriller. Imagine this. You build a successful company with your partner, you buy him out, and then he turns around and tries to use a legal loophole to snatch the whole thing right out from under you. Well, that's exactly what happened in a 1921 Supreme Court case we're diving into today. A wild story of betrayal that really put the idea of fairness to the test. So here's how we're going to unpack this. First, we'll look at how the partnership and its key asset came to be. Then comes the plot twist, the shocking move by the former partner. We'll see how that created a legal showdown, what the court ultimately decided, and most importantly, we'll dig into the powerful reasoning behind why good faith triumphed over a legal technicality. All right, let's set the stage. Our story starts with two businessmen, Pang Lim and Lo Seng. Together, they're partners in a thriving distillery called El Progreso. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like a solid, successful venture. Now, this timeline is really key to understanding the whole case. For years, these guys are building the business side by side. They get a lease. Then, when the property needs some serious, expensive upgrades, they commit even further, negotiating a brand new 15-year extension. This was the foundation for the distillery's long-term success. It was only after all that value was locked in that Pang Lim decides to sell his entire stake to Lo Seng, making Lo Seng the sole owner. And this lease, this was the lifeblood of the business. To secure that 15-year term, both Pang Lim and Lo Seng had to pour thousands of pesos of their own money into improving the property. So this wasn't just a simple rental agreement, it was a huge foundational investment. And remember, Pang Lim was a key part of creating this value, which he then sold to his partner for a nice profit. Okay, so the deal's done. Lo Seng is now running the show by himself. But just 2 years later, this is where our story takes a very, very sharp turn. Pang Lim, the guy who just cashed out, makes a move that threatens to blow up the entire business he helped build. Can you believe this? The former partner, the man who profited by selling his half of that valuable lease, goes behind everyone's back, straight to the landlord, and buys the entire property himself. And he didn't just buy it to sit on it. Oh no. Almost immediately, Pang Lim, in his new role as the landlord, files an eviction lawsuit against his former partner. He's trying to terminate the exact same 15-year lease that he himself had signed, benefited from, and sold just a couple of years earlier. Well, as you can imagine, this kicks off a huge legal battle. And the whole thing really boils down to this one central conflict, a specific written rule in the law versus the fundamental principle of what's fair. The arguments from both sides were pretty straightforward. Pang Lim was basically saying, hey, look at the law. I'm the new owner, and the civil code says I have the right to end this lease. But Lo Seng's defense was much more about fairness and common sense. Hold on, you can't sell me something valuable and then turn around and use a legal trick to destroy it. And honestly, on paper, Pang Lim seemed to have a point. Article 1571 of the Civil Code was pretty clear. A new owner could, in fact, terminate an existing lease. Since their lease wasn't officially recorded in a certain way, the strict, literal reading of the law seemed to be in his favor. And this, right here, is the absolute heart of the matter. It's the multi-million-dollar question the court had to answer. Can you use a new legal status, like being a purchaser, to weasel out of the responsibilities you created for yourself under an old status, like being a partner? Let's see what the court had to say. The Supreme Court, thankfully, refused to look at this one article in a vacuum. They didn't just read the one sentence. Instead, they zoomed out and looked at the entire history, the entire relationship between these two men, to figure out what was really going on. And the final ruling, it was a complete and total victory for Lo Seng. The Supreme Court overturned the lower court's decision, threw out Pang Lim's complaint, and absolved Lo Seng completely. The eviction was off, and the business was safe. So the big question is why? Why did Lo Seng win when the letter of the law seemed to be on Pang Lim's side? This is where we get into the court's core reasoning, what lawyers call the ratio de sedendi. It's the why behind the decision, and it established a really powerful principle. The court's entire argument hinged on one single concept, the nature of a partnership. See, a partnership isn't just a business contract. The court defined it as a fiduciary relationship. That's a fancy term that means partners owe each other the absolute highest level of loyalty, trust, and good faith. And in the court's eyes, Pang Lim's actions were a flagrant violation of that sacred duty. And the court did not mince words here. The justices actually wrote that allowing Pang Lim to get away with this would be shocking to the moral sense.
They argued that the law can't be twisted into a tool for injustice, and that the very sense of justice recoils before the mere possibility of that kind of outcome. So this case really hammered home a few crucial legal doctrines. First, you have to act in good faith and honor your own obligations. Second, and this is the big one, the court applied what's called the doctrine of estoppel. Now, in simple terms, estoppel just means you are legally prevented or stopped from taking a position that flat contradicts something you've previously done or said. Since Panglim sold the lease, he was estopped from later trying to destroy it. And finally, you can't use insider knowledge you gain from a partnership to turn around and hurt your former partner.
And really, that's what this whole story leaves us with. It's a profound question about what justice really is. This case is a powerful reminder that sometimes the true meaning of the law isn't found in the literal words on a page, but in the deeper principles of fairness, equity, and good faith that those words are supposed to serve.